We got a lot of content this last week in MLB The Show 22, from our BR program, which just dropped about an hour ago today, to our other headliners and monthly award programs. So we got to add them all to our tier list today and see where they stand. We're about a week from our All-Star Game content and expect even more chaos in just about a week from now. But without further ado, we got a lot to talk about today. Let's get into our tier lists. First, I always like to mention, how do the tier lists work? These are all my personal preferences, the attributes that I prefer. I'm normally judging these cards for like a World Series push in ranked season, because that's really where people really care about their teams the most. I value things like higher contact and power, value defense depending on the position, and I kind of take into account the current meta of the game based on the best starting pitchers and the most used starting pitchers. You'll see when we judge each position, there might be some slight differences, and you may have some cards that you do really well with that are really low in the tier list, and that's okay. That is how the card attributes work in this game and how card swings work. You could have a card that's a D tier that you really love. Let me know in the comments who those players are that you think I am underrating. First, you see in that S plus tier, I think the go-to catcher right now in terms of a ranked seasons push would be the new 97 Mike Napoli that dropped in our BR program. Here are his attributes in case you have not seen him at all. Main reason that I think he's the go-to catcher. He's got the reverse split, so he's got 115 power, 125 contact versus right. He's got better attributes versus righties and lefties. The contact still is elite versus both sides, and 80 power is good. Lower vision could be a maybe minor problem, but not really that much. His swing should feel quick. I think he'll have at least balance or pull tendencies on this card. And at least he's a primary catcher. So even though he starts off at 69 fielding, just using him a little bit will get him up in parallel. This bat should be definitely worth using at catcher. But obviously we have other options at catcher. He is not the only one. Mike Piazza is so great if you've done great with him, and Joe Mauer would honestly still be an elite pick. I think Giovanni Soto, our Home Run Derby X card, is actually better than our Future Star cards, because he actually brings better hitting to the table. Better contact and power versus both sides than a lot of our other catchers on average. So if you don't like any Future Stars catchers, try Giovanni Soto. However, I guarantee there will at least be one catcher released within the next week that'll be better. I'm keeping an eye out on a Wilson Contreras, probably an Alejandro Kirk as well. And when we include secondaries at catcher, you see not much really changes on this front. However, if you're someone who is looking for a beginner catcher, really consider that A tier. Guys like Kyle Farmer are really good options. Now we move on to first base. And first base is a power premium position. I kind of treat first and third pretty similarly. They are positions where I find that power matters a ton, and you got to use this spot in your lineup as probably one of, if not your best hitter, and probably sacrifice some defense. The beauty of it is there are a lot of first base options for you to try. I think Taglia is actually a really, really good option. I moved him up on the list, but I still think Frank Thomas is the guy. Like, no card is really close to him as primary first baseman go. However, just saying, a really good Paul Goldschmidt card, if they decide to drop that this next week, could be nasty. In terms of our secondaries, though, you see we actually have a few options that were added. The new 95 monthly award Schwarber's a nice one. Napoli, you could play him at a secondary. You can even slide Piazza over there as a secondary. All of these guys are viable options as a first base option. Keep an eye out on Nick Swisher, though, because he's going to be a lot like Taglia. The switch hitting is going to be extremely valuable. However, his defense is going to be a little bit worse at first. But Swisher's contact is a little bit more well-rounded than Taglia, so he's actually a really nice budget option for a first baseman. But, you know, there are a lot of options at first. You can play so many people at secondaries. Also, you see the new headliner, Ryan Howard? Yeah, they done did him dirty. This is our current headliner, Ryan Howard. He's definitely no more than a bench bat versus righties. I think they just gave us this Howard to have a middle of the year card, and I think by the end of the year we'll have a 99. Him only getting a 96 to end the year would be extremely disappointing, and this card, that the contact versus lefty, is just not going to be startable. People aren't going to want to start him. Here are our second basemen, and in terms of primary only, the only real change is the one headliner, Nolan Gorman. While he's not a bad option, his contact versus left is really a little bit low. And again, in this part of the game, you're facing a lot of lefties in ranked seasons. Gorman would be no more than like an all-star goon for you if you're playing on that part of the game. While he's actually pretty nasty on his own, It's just tough to recommend someone with lefty splits as bad as he has. So right now, I can't really recommend Nolan Gorman too much. However, actually still really good in terms of our primary second baseman. But again, once we include our secondaries, then you start to realize that you can play a shortstop at a secondary more than easily. Looking at our other guys that are notable in this is a good spot to get a switch hitter like Eduardo Escobar, Ketel Marte, or Jorge Polanco. They're all great options. Chase Utley's still great. Foscue is nice. Soriano, I still have to give a try. And there are a lot of options once you include secondaries. It's just that this is a position where you would probably value a little bit more speed and solid defense, a mix of those two things. And if you could get a switch hitter, this is actually a good position to get one of them in, because it's not a very deep position. Now, in terms of our shortstops, shortstop is a tough one because I think this position could still use a little bit more love in terms of primaries. And I think we're gonna get that with our All-Star Game content, with a couple All-Star Game guys being good options like Tim Anderson. These are our shortstops right now, and I think Xander, the new headliner, is the go-to guy. I did a debut with him the other day, and I'm going to still start him until our All-Star Game content. I just think his bat, defense, speed, being well-rounded makes him the go-to primary option. Thing is, you look at our shortstops, again, guys like Brady House are a little bit weaker. I have a tough time leaving him in the S tier. Guys like Mason Wynn as well. It's a little bit weaker in terms of your future star cards, not bringing enough hitting to the table. And even guys like Semien and Crawford are right on the edge of that S tier. They're lucky that this position isn't that deep at this current point in the game, because honestly, anyone that is after Michael Young could easily be moved down. Now, in terms of secondaries at shortstop, again, you could get a good switch hitter here like Escobar. He gets gold fielding after a few parallels at secondaries. Same with Ketel. You could use Jorge Polanco, but the defense is more of a punishment here at short, so I don't recommend him as much, but he's still a great option here. And again, your future star guys are still majority of the options here at shortstop. But again, Xander is definitely the dude to use in terms of a primary shortstop. But I bet you will see some change here with our All-Star Game content coming out. In terms of primary third baseman, the only one that we got was the monthly award Brandon Drury. And I'm not going to lie, I think he's actually an S tier option. If you are going to play ranked, he's going to have really good splits versus lefties. And he's actually to be pretty respectable versus right, too. He's got pretty good contact versus right, like 93, I think. Again, this card is definitely more valuable as a bench bat, though. And I really recommend, if you're going to use a third baseman, definitely consider using Brett, Devers, or Beatty. One of those three are going to be really good offensive options for you if you have not tried them. And as you see, we have a lot of shortstops at secondaries. You got guys like Hannes Wagner. A lot of options when you start to include the secondaries. Nolan Gorman, I would again put in the A tier because he is definitely lacking versus the lefties. I just think the power is more of a premium in this position. And the other guys here, like Foscue, would be way better off as a third baseman as a future star card in comparison to Nolan Gorman, because at the very least, Foscue could really do well in this lefty starter meta we have right now. Nolan Gorman kind of struggles a little bit, and with how well some of these other guys hit, even versus lefties, I have a tough time putting him above. Also, don't sleep on the Albert Pujols. He actually got a little bit of a price crash. If you haven't tried him, give him a go. That card was really fun. One of my favorite cards of the year, honestly. Now to our outfield. Our outfield list is always chaos. The list is so big. This right here is your F to B tier. These are the cards that you probably want to avoid. Or if you're going to use any B tier cards, they should be more so beginner cards for your team. And then past that, you're going to move forward and likely go for the A and S tier. Honestly, I could move Jordan and Byron Buxton up a little bit here because they actually are solid bench bats at least. You know, Byron Buxton is good power, and Jordan is really good versus righties as a bench bat. And the B class is what I like to call our bench bats. So if they're not going to be used as a starter, they're very viable bench bats. Now we go to our A, S, and S plus tier. Remember, the S plus tier is who I prefer the most, who I would be picking in outfields. The S plus tier is really big because we got a lot of really good content this last week. The outfield became a lot more heavy with good options. And that'll change again in just about a week here. The new Brian Reynolds is elite. I don't care what anyone says. That is a top tier center field option. I'm using him over Mike Trout right now, so I get the switch hitter out there. Cedric Mullins, his new card. This card is great. Actually, it exceeded some of my expectations. They did a great job of giving him good contact, 111 and 100. The power in contact versus right and left is good, 106-91. Right around his All-Star Game card last year. And he's got 87 fielding, so he'll get the diamond fielding at center field. And he has 83 speed. His arm actually could have been a lot worse than this too. So I like this card a ton. Cedric is a very fun outfield option. He's going to be a little bit expensive until the All-Star Game content at the very least. I think in about a week he'll be dirt cheap. This card is a great outfield option, being 100% real. And yeah, in terms of our other S+ options, Jordan I think is definitely viable to start. I know his defense is scary. That all comes down to how you play and what you prefer. But this man hits nukes. Like, he is one of the best hitting cards, if not the best hitting card in the game. And he's a lot in the Castellanos class, where it's like the bat is so good, I think you gotta use him. But I think he actually gets a little bit more of a boost than Castellanos, because I think this card, even though we have a lefty starter meta, will still be really good versus lefties. It all comes down to what you prefer in a card. Jordan getting quirks and being really good in the attributes has him a little bit above Castellanos for me. But yeah, other good options. Vlad Sr., loved him. I actually used him a bunch in BR. Loved that card. George Springer is still great. You could also use Johnny Gomes and Nick Swisher in your outfield in terms of your Home Run Derby X cards. They are viable, well-rounded hitting options. And again, some of our future star cards have made a little bit of a bump back to the A tier, unfortunately. By the way, Teoscar Hernandez is a great bench bat versus lefties if you are not using him there. And now when we start to include the secondaries in the outfield, we get some absolute chaos. I forgot to mention in the other bunch, there's a new event reward, Garrett Anderson. I'm not gonna lie, this card is definitely a good budget outfielder. He's gonna be pretty cheap by the time the event ends. He'll be probably around, what, 20, 30K? Contact is well-rounded versus both sides. He actually has 100 power versus left. He's gonna be a nice bet. I would only play him in left or right, though. Don't play this man in center. You probably want to keep him in left with the attributes he has. Get a couple parallels to get the gold fielding. This bat is actually really nice. He seems a lot like the David Justice type. So yeah, in terms of our outfielders, I mean, we have a lot of S tier options. You gotta find what works best with you. Some of our monthly award guys there, some of our future stars, whatever you find best. As you see, there are a lot of options. If you're really looking for the cream of the crop, I'm telling you, try your S+ tier guys. These I think are the best hitting cards and bring, you know, enough defense to the table where it doesn't hurt you much. Now, in terms of our starting pitching, again, we'll split this one in half because the list is so big. This is the F to B tier. F are to completely avoid, don't touch, I can't stand these cards' existence. Our B tier are more so the beginning viable starters. Something like Pablo Lopez is definitely still that case, like viable starters. Your A and S tier are really going to be the ones I recommend. Some of our future star guys like Detmers and Brash I think are pretty respectable. I think Job is probably up here as well. These would be more so recommended as your 3, 4, 5 starters in the A tier, unless you really have no other options. Then your S tier should consist of your aces, your first 3 pitchers of your rotation at least. Being 100% realistic, I think everyone could get all 5 starters to be in the S and S+ tier. It all just depends on what type of pitch mix you prefer and how you do with certain pitchers. Some people love Corbin Burns. I haven't loved him. I love Greg Maddux. Some people don't love Greg Maddux. These are all the best options, though. They have the best pitch mixes, good attributes. Mike Messina will probably be out of this S tier along with Fernando Valenzuela. Once we get our All-Star Game content, if we get some really good starters, that S tier is going to become really, really stacked. Speaking of which, we got to look at the new Yu Darvish card. This is what his attributes look like. This is the reason he is S tier. Primary pitch cutter is really interesting, and it's significantly slower. So he's got the 4-seam, cutter, sinker, pitch mix, and a slider. And he's got a good little splitter too, which is pretty nice. But the nice part about this card is the variance in speed between the cutter and the other fastballs. The hits and K sprine is pretty good. It's not elite though. He definitely seemed like more of a control dude from the looks of it. And then this is another new event reward, Aaron Ashby. Solid lefty starter. Again, probably going to add on a little bit to the mix of the lefty starter meta. He should be at least a very budget-friendly lefty starter. I would say he's A tier though, because again, I don't think he's going to keep up with the S tier guys who have really good pitch mixes. They have the meta pitch mixes, I should say. So someone like Ashby is good. He's got the sinker, he's got a slider and a circle change. Love those pitches. The 12-6 curves are a little tough. And having that 4-seam, it's got to have a little bit more juice in the sinker, I think. It doesn't have much breaker speed, so it's kind of feels like a pointless pitch. And finally, last but not least, our relief pitchers. The only real change we saw here was monthly awards with Jorge Lopez. He's definitely in the Clay Holmes category where he could be pretty good with that high velo sinker, but good hitters might have a good read on him. So Again, I don't think they're going to be a must-use reliever, but if you're looking for a good budget option, try Jorge Lopez or Clay Holmes in your pen. And then I still think our S and S plus tier still stays the same. Brian Wilson, I've enjoyed. Yohan Duran is still good. Devin Williams is still respectable. It's just we're missing some lights out reliever names at this point in the game. I don't think any of the bullpen is overpowered or anything right now. And this is why I think I stick with starting pitching a lot in this game, because I really feel more confident with starting pitching than the bullpen at this point. You're honestly a lot better off if you have a starting pitcher going late into a game, riding the high confidence and momentum, and keeping them in late game. However, with our all-star game content, I'm expecting a good amount of relievers, lefty and righty, to be in the mix, getting all-star game cards. And those are going to be cards to look out for your pen, because they will actually be very good options. So yeah, that is it for the tier list. I know we kind of talked a bit about our new content. There was a lot of cards from Home Run Derby to monthly awards to the new stuff we got today. Next week, we'll be doing a tier list on this day of all of the all-star game cards that we get. So make sure you are subbed to the channel. I'll keep you all updated with that about a week from now. But I appreciate you all watching these tier list Tuesdays. I hope you guys enjoy them. And I'll see you all again here tomorrow with some gameplay with our BR cards. Deuces.